Hey, what's going on, guys? Watomarmelon back again, and as always, if you guys do enjoy, make sure to like, subscribe, all that sort of stuff, and check out the affiliate links in the description below. Clicking those doesn't cost you anything, and if you make a purchase after clicking them, it does support the channel, so I appreciate that greatly. We're going to start things off with the elephant in the room. It's Century Bonanza. I was hoping that by now they'd have pictures of all the different cards. It seems like they only really have pictures of the Dark Magician Girl alternate arts. So we'll see where everything ends up. But I have a lot of opinions about Century Bonanza, and I was looking at pre-sales before, and I wanted to say things about those, and I didn't think a lot of the analysis surrounding the pre-sales actually made sense. But here's my thought, or here are some of my thoughts on the current status of Century Bonanza. I think it's a really good set, and if you're picking it up sealed long term, you do have to weigh the opportunity cost of just putting that money into stocks or something like that. But I do think it's something people are going to want to open, or are going to continue to want to open. You're just playing this game of predicting how much was it ordered, how much was it printed, and so trying to guess at what the supply is. At the end of the day, a set can be really good or have a lot of chase cards that are desirable in it, and if it's oversupplied, it takes a long time for it to appreciate. Just think Ghost from the Past 2. Sealed on that is still only barely squeaking up, despite the fact that it has a ton of chase cards that people want. So looking at the prices, atop the set is Blue Eyes White Dragon. Most pre-sales had this at, I think, 50, and so to see it at 70, it's not a huge increase relative to the pre-sales, but I would say that given the size of the set, I would expect the most expensive Century Secret Rare in the set to be more than $100. And so I don't know exactly what it's going to be right now. I think that Blue Eyes White Dragon, while it will be expensive, I'd be very surprised if that ends up being the sort of top card in the set. I think it's more reasonable that something playable like Triple Tactics Thrust and Century Secret Rare or something like that would actually be at the top of the set. But we'll end up seeing. It's just that, the Blue Eyes had the SDK art printed in the Megatins, and that's like a $20 card. I don't think people are going to spend $100 on an art that's typically viewed as less desirable. I actually like this art a lot, but I just don't think that the general populace and the general collector base is going to want to spend a ton of money on this copy, although they'll spend some on it. Caius is one that some people were predicting to be at the top of the set. I just don't see it, and I love Monarchs. You guys, if you've ever seen any of my collection videos, you know I'm the biggest Monarch fan, and it's just, I think a lot of people are out of touch with respect to how much supply of some of these cards there are. Do I think that this is a staple in Edison and people desperately wanted another high rarity printing? Yes. Do I think this is an excellent choice of a Century Secret Rare? Yes. But do I think there are enough Edison players to satisfy the demand for this card? No, certainly not at $50 or $70, which is the current market price. I think that Edison is a popular alternative format, but it's one that is not large enough to consume or make a card from that format that's not broadly collectible stay atop the set. I just don't see it. I don't think it's going to maintain this $50 price point. I think it's one of the most overrated cards in the set. And this is coming from a collector that would actually like it. And I love Monarchs. So I just don't think that this is something that people want relative to this price point. Something you can look at other Monarchs in the set, like Mobius, which is playable in GOAT format, is citable and somewhat playable in Edison format as well. So it might even be more broadly playable. Pretty similar usage across the combination of the two formats to Edison with Caius, and it's nowhere near Caius. I just think that the reason the Turbo Pack 3 Ultimate Rare Caius is so expensive is just a question of supply, and the fact that it's been hyped up. So it's easy to make it disappear because there aren't many of them, and people have bought into the hype. So I just think this is going to go down. Let's talk about these Dark Magician Girls. I think something like this is more likely to be atop the set, but you have to keep in mind the original art Dark Magician Girl was released in the Megatins, and that's a cheap $10 card. It takes a little bit, I don't know that any of these artworks are so iconic that in Quarter Century Secret they could be, $100 card. It just seems unlikely to me. And so we'll have to monitor them. I can see that Dark Magician Girl Quarter Century Secret Rare B is above 70, so it seems like some people are betting on this one being atop the set. If you just look at the actual price, you see that this is more expensive than the Blue Eyes. So, we'll see where it ends up. My rating of the three different artworks is actually A, B, C. I think A is the best, B is the second best, and C is the third best. I personally like A a lot, but it's not something that if I can buy the original art in Quarter Century Secret for $10, that I'm going to spend, $50 on this necessarily. Maybe down the road, but I don't really have the interest right now. And so I would be a little bit surprised to see one of these arts, albeit they haven't been reprinted many times, but I'd be a bit surprised to see them atop the set. And then you have some stuff like Sky Striker, Mobilize, Engage. I'd be surprised with this one atop the set. Dark Magician, always going to be lower than Blue Eyes, so I'd be surprised with that as well. There's more Sky Striker stuff. So I don't really see anything that jumps out as being reasonable atop the set. It's mainly like some collectible cards and then Sky Strikers at the top. Besides Quarter Century Secret Rare Triple Tactics Thrust. I think this is a super playable card and people are going to want it. And as long as it's not touched on the ban list, it's going to be something that people are going to be picking up in droves. Something I want to touch on is Blackluster Soldier Envoy at the beginning. This is another one of those cards similar to Caius that people were talking about at the top of the set. Many pre-sales had it as the most expensive card. I also just do not see it. I think that it's an interesting card. It's a card that I'm going to be buying, but it's just not something like it's super playable in GOAT, but it's a one of, and I don't know if the GOAT community is large enough to consume all of these. Moreover, I think a lot of the GOAT players and are more interested in some of the alternate versions. Like, this will never be as iconic as the first edition original print IOC version. It's just never going to be able to compete with it. And then there are also other modern printings. Like, there's the Collector Rare out of Toon Chaos. And so you have to ask yourself, does it make sense that this would be a super expensive card? I think people have, Konami has popped the balloon of modern collecting in Yu-Gi-Oh! I think it's in an interesting place. Everything's much cheaper and there's a lot more of it, which is cool. It makes it easier to buy things. But at the same time, I don't think you're going to see any interest in people spending hundreds of dollars on something like a Blackluster Soldier as they did with Toon Chaos, because they've watched as basically all of the, high rarity, luxury rarity modern cards have just been reprinted to the ground with other, high rarities, oftentimes in much more accessible ways. Again, look at Stardust Dragon. It was $600, $700 in Starlight Rare, and then they printed a nearly identical Quarter Century Secret Rare version that was $5, and it just completely took all the value from it. And so I just don't think people are putting money into it unless they just want it in their binder, which is healthier, but at the same time, you're not going to see prices like you used to see. And so people comparing this to the original Toon Chaos version, I just don't see it at all. And that's coming from someone who loves this card. Judgment Dragon's interesting. I don't hate it at this price point because the Dark Arm Dragon Quarter Century Secret Rare is also available. And so it makes a nice, cool, collectible set. I've seen that one has spiked up. I probably should have gone over it, but, I think people are realizing, there's so many of these Quarter Century Secret Rares that you can get all of your favorite cards or many of your favorite cards in it. And there are a lot of ones of my favorite cards that I would never expect would get a modern high rarity printing, like Mobius the Frost Monarch, and they are. And it's like, okay, cool, excellent. I love that. But it's just surprising because I was not expecting it. And so I think there is an interesting dynamic where there's so many of these Quarter Century Secrets that there's a lot of stuff to say. I've talked for almost 10 minutes on just this first couple of cards, so I'll go a little faster. But Cyber Dragon Quarter Century Secret Rare, alternate art. There's a original art printing in Quarter Century Secret that's $3, and there's an alt art ultimate rare out of OTS that I think is better than this. Was $45 before this release, probably is 30 something now. So I don't think that this is reasonable at the top. Blue Eyes Ultimate has a ghost rare, but I still think there aren't many high rarity printings, so this is probably pretty decent. Raigeki has an ultimate rare and a first ed LOB printing. Flame Wingman is somewhat interesting. I think it's a little bit overhyped as a collectible, but there aren't any really competing modern high rarity printings, so it's pretty decent. Stratos already had a Starlight rare and an ultimate rare. Not sure where that ends up. Magic Cylinder is, I could go on and talk about what is underrated and overrated. I'll just quickly, go back and forth and illustrate my points that most of these have no business being as expensive as they are right now. Magic Cylinder, lowest listing is around 25. This set was released like last week. Magic Cylinder, this is the original print released in 2003, first edition, secret rare, $40. I just can't see a world where this sticks at 25. Again, this is my favorite trap card. I just don't see it. I honestly just don't see it. Doesn't make sense. And so I think this stuff will continue to fall out, especially Magic Cylinder, where it's not really playable at all. Just no business being this expensive. Dark Paladin, interesting. I think it's a little overhyped. I can't talk about some of these like Ice Barrier cards and Necroz cards. Who knows? It seems like people are buying them out, so I guess they're somewhat interesting. Draw spells like Upstart, that actually seems pretty decent. This is one that I think could do quite well. Dark Magician Girl the Dragon Knight. This is one that I've said they needed to print in high rarity, and they finally did it. I like this one a lot because the only other competing version is an original print secret from 2013. This is a banger right here. This is an actual banger, and to me it's crazy to see this. There are, over 20 cards ahead of it. This is number 22. I think that this is a banger and people are underappreciating it. If we move to the next page, there's so many of them, I'm not going to be able to go through the entire set list and provide commentary. More Necroz stuff is getting bought out. The God cards, these are really cool. I love these arts. I don't know how they'll do because they have the red, yellow, blue versions. These were the first Quarter Century Secrets released in the TCG. They're not as shiny or as nice as the current version of Quarter Century Secrets, but I don't know how these do because those ones I think are still more desirable to casual collectors. Bonfire playable, Cyber and Dragon interesting, but I just don't think that it's broad. I think people are going to want this, but at $30, I don't know. Chaos Emperor, arguably my favorite card of all time. I just don't think that it's not playable in any way, and it's a cool card, but there's also the collector rare, etc., etc. Who knows? Mirror Force, I do think this is pretty decent. Jinzo doesn't have any other modern printings. Same thing with Scum and Skull. There's nothing else to really compete with it. So I think it's pretty decent. Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon. Did not even know this is in here. That's a pretty cool card. I think it's niche enough that it probably is overpriced right now. There's the original print FMR, but still, this is a really, really cool card. Tomb Blackluster Soldier. Man, I just made that video saying I didn't, my top 10 cards, and I had the collector of this on it. I said I didn't expect it to get a high rarity reprint. I just ate my words. I was wrong about a lot of things. They printed a lot of things that I was not expecting them, but that's just the game. This is a cool one, but I think it's overpriced at 22. Cold Wave, no idea why this is so expensive. This is another one that I would be interested in picking up. It's a really powerful card that's currently banned, but I just don't think it's broadly playable in those old formats, and so doesn't really make sense at 23. Some Ubel cards. This is a lot of the mid-era stuff. I can't speak to how collectible it is necessarily. I think there are people who are going to want it, but I think a lot of this stuff is going to fall out significantly. Eradicator Epidemic Virus, really cool card. And I know it was somewhat playable for some time recently. Some more just House Dragon Maid, Ancient Gear Golem, DD Warrior Lady. This is a cool one. Again, another one that hasn't seen sort of a modern high rarity printing, but I think a lot of the GX stuff is more niche than people are expecting. And this is coming from a GX guy, so I don't know where everything ends up landing. Absolute Zero, that's somewhat playable, so who knows. Heavy Storm, I think this is actually a pretty solid one right here. Dark Magician, the Dragon Knight, another really solid one that I think is being a bit underrated. The alternate art polymerization, this is a really solid one. And so I think there's a lot of like random stuff that's good in previous formats that's not broadly playable, that I don't know why it's so expensive. Mechanical Chaser, that should not be a $20 card. It was pre-selling for like $5 on Gamer's Choice. This is not going to be a $20 card. Graceful Charity, that is something that is an absolute staple in GOAT format and a pretty iconic card. To me, wouldn't be crazy to see this at higher than 20. And so, but I see that there are a ton of listings for it, so who knows? So it's hard to predict, but when I look at a lot of these cards right now, I think that the relative ordering of the prices doesn't make sense to me at all. So we'll have to end up seeing how everything pans out. I'm not going to go through every card, as I said, but there's a lot of cool stuff in here, and I'm generally super excited about this set. And I can't wait to get my hands on some of the cards. It's just, given where everything is, I'm a little hesitant to put any money into things because I just think that most of the stuff is way, way, way overpriced. All right, and now to go back to the tins. This to me is part of the reason why things seem overpriced. I mean, I can get Exodia pieces for $2.50, Dark Magician Girl for $10, Blue Eyes for $20, and a ton of other bangers for like $2 or less. Some of these are $1. And so when I flip through a lot of those quarter century secrets out of quarter century Bonanza, it's just like they're not as nice as a lot of these, which are $1 cards. I get they're harder to pull, and so that's going to make them more expensive, but you know, unless it's a really desirable card, I don't see where all the demand is going to come from. So we'll have to see. But man, you know, there's some really, you know, if you haven't picked these up, I've said it before, like I would put money into a lot of these cards in the sense that like I picked up an early copy just because, you know, I spent $25 on a Blue Eyes. I don't care if it becomes a $10 card. $25 for a really shiny Blue Eyes SDK art, put me in, coach. I bought a Dark Magician Girl at like 12. Do I care that it went down? Not really. It's a really, really nice looking card. And so at 10, that seems pretty nice. And there are 143 listings. There's just such a huge amount of supply of this stuff. And it's generally pretty freaking nice. Here we go. Retro pack. This set was like hyped into the moon. You know, it was, everybody was talking about it, and I think it's a cool set to open up. It genuinely seems like a cool set to open up, but I don't know that there's going to be any long-term sort of interest in anything besides like if it's cheap to open up, people are going to continue to open it up because it's fun to open up, but the value just really not there, and I don't hear anybody talking about retro pack anymore. It's completely fallen out. I have to speed through things because I'm already at 18 minutes. Dragon of Pride and Soul, this is the next iteration of cards that Konami is trying to get you to collect. It's come down considerably in the past 3 months, as you can see. If we look at the 6-month trajectory, you see that people bought it out, and then it's just come down from there. I mean, when Konami is trying to get you to collect cards that cost $50, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense because I can collect a Dark Magician Girl for 10 or a Blue Eyes for 20. Or, you know, any of these other cards that are more iconic than Dragon of Pride and Soul for way, way less. So we'll see how this stuff ends up panning out. This is a cool card, and I've said it with the other Exodia quarter century secrets, these like modern printings or modern reprints. These are cool because the way that Exodia fits inside of a 3 by 3 binder, so these 9-page binders, is that you can only fit, like, you need 2 rows to get all 5 of the pieces, but then you have an empty space underneath the head, and I think that cards like this are really great to put in that space. And so I like this and the other, I'm forgetting the name, it's an effect monster that looks very similar to this. They both look great, and I think they're, you know, pretty decent. You can see that this one's been bought out again. Lowest listing for near mints around $60. Ultimate Dragon of Pride and Soul. This one, you know, got bought out considerably, and let's look at where people. Yeah, you can see that people were buying the near mints for like 80. it has come way down, back to 60. I just don't think that for these modern collectible cards, if they keep releasing quarter-century bonanzas and tins where they have a ton of these really cool cards for $1, that people are going to be going after this stuff. Heart of the Blue Eyes. This is one that's kind of stabilizing around 60. Cool artwork, very prominent blue eyes on it, but again, we'll see where this thing ends up. I don't have a ton of enthusiasm about cards like that. Red Eyes Black Full Metal Dragon. This one's creeping back up. Another, modern retrain thing. I think it's cool. I like it, but at 46, I'm not buying it. Blackluster Soldier Envoy the Beginning Collector Rare. This is what I wanted to touch on. You can see that people are already starting to sell this thing for around $90, $92. It's tough, man. You put your money into something like this and then Konami just prints a quarter-century secret version. It's how it is, and you can see that the market price 3 months ago was $177. I mean, a year ago it was $255. Now it's under $100. It's almost $90. It's almost 1/3 of the price a year ago. This is why, don't put your money into some of these very expensive cards. It's just all it takes is a printing or two, and it's really lost all of its value. Another one, this is one that I recently picked up because I love this card. And as much as I love it, do I regret overspending on it? Obviously. But it's a cool card that I'm going to keep in my collection. It is what it is. Now it's down to 107. You can see there are a ton of sellers, and the sales rate is pretty poor. I mean, this thing's going to be a $50 card soon. Hungry Burger, the meme. Don't buy into memes. People buy into memes, and then the memes are no longer very interesting, and the card falls out completely. And that's what you're seeing with Hungry Burger. This is one that I've said, if this is under $20, I'll probably pick up one. But because of all the recent interest and the release of prismatic collector rares, I'm actually going back to some of these collector rares that have lost all of their value, that I like how they look. I like the aesthetics. I want them in my collection. But they were pretty expensive before, and as they lose all of their value, it's a decent time for me to go in and pick them up, and that's what I'm planning to do. Lightning Storm, this is one that I really like. You can see how this thing is just falling off a cliff, really. $12 card. This is one I'm interested in. And then we'll round out with some Ghost Rares. With all of the releases of Quarter Century Secrets, I think that people are going to go back, in terms of collector stuff, to vintage. That's what people are going to put their money in. And then also the Ghost Rares, because it's been almost 3 years since Ghost from the Past 2, and Konami has kind of respected the Ghost Rare since then by not overprinting it. I said it was way, way, way underrated when it was like $130, $140. There's one seller who's not verified at $175 for a near mint, another one at $185, and yeah, that's where you find the next verified seller. And then quickly, if you're looking for verified sellers, you're seeing stuff that's going to make you at 220. So even though it's sort of spiked up to 220 and it's fallen back out to around 190, a little under that, 180, I still think that this is a pretty decent card that people are going to want to keep in their collection. And then we'll finish things out with Dark Magician Girl. Let me filter this to near mint. And what you can see is that I said this was so underrated, and I said buy, basically at this point. I said you should buy the card. Hopefully you did buy the card, because you can see the lowest listing, PSA 8 for $235, raw, almost $250. It's almost doubled in price. I mean, it was pretty obvious, and I said this with rare cards, if they respected the Ghost Rare, people like the Ghost Rare, even though people were making these. There's this collective group think that the Ghost Rares were terrible out of Ghost from the Past 2. They weren't, and people love them. And now that the supply is starting to go down a bit, things are spiking. And I think a lot of the attention has been taken off Quarter Century Secrets, off collector rares, off Starlight rares. The only thing that really remains are the ghost rares. And so that's where we find ourselves. So hopefully you guys did enjoy. As always, like, subscribe, that sort of stuff. It's been your boy Watomarmelon, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.